What's up, everyone? So I got this Miata up today, Miata on Mega Squirts. Everything looks pretty decent in the bay. There's a couple things that I noted and pointed out in my mind. We got some blue RTV on the turbo. Hopefully we don't see any leaks there. He did say he did a boost leak test, which is a plus. See some epoxy holding that thing on, but you know, hopefully we don't get no leaks. The only thing I do not like is the catch can and how it's routed. So basically, when you have a catch can, what you're trying to ultimately do is you're trying to vent excess pressure from the motor. Of course, when you're boosting, you're gonna have a little bit of blow by, and it's gonna end up in your crankcase, which is what houses the pistons and the crank. Hence the term crankcase. But basically, what you're doing here now, this is a PCV valve, so by right they're only supposed to flow one direction. But let's just say this PCV valve shitted out. Let's say it's a cheap one, whatever, old, and it's not doing its job anymore. So ultimately what you're doing is the turbo is spooling up boost, you're pushing boost in your intake manifold. Now you're pushing boost out of your intake manifold into your catch can. So number one, if it's a vented catch can, which I can't tell if that's a filter, this is a huge vacuum leak / boost leak. I am going to say that that is not a filter, if I recall correctly. So basically what all this is doing is it's going to create, it's not really, won't really call it a catch can. If it's not, well, if it's not venting, I guess you can, I guess the better term would be called oil separator. But ultimately what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this off and I'm just going to cap it off for the dyno tune. I'm going to explain to the customer why I capped it off. If he wants to hook it up down the road the way that he wants to hook it up, that's going to be on him. Ultimately what I do suggest doing, I don't suggest hooking it up to your intake, and I highly suggest a vented catch can that would have a filter on it. But ultimately what I would recommend is you can do 2 on the valve cover. Some blocks have a port where you can vent out on the block itself. And then if you have a catch can with the extra ports, what you can do is have a little intake arm coming off your turbo with another inlet or outlet, whatever you want to call it, and then that one will go to the catch can. So what that actually will do is when you're full throttle and your turbo's working, it's going to create a small little vacuum, but that will help relieve pressure from your engine. This is nothing new too. If you go back and you go just do a Google search, if catch cans and everything are new to you, do a Google search for vacuum pumps and V8s, and understand basically how old school guys are using vacuum pumps to literally suck out pressure, and you gain power. If you have pressure on the bottom of your piston, and of course you have pressure on the top of your piston, well, everything has to work harder. So the more pressure you can relieve from the block, the better. So some people, every now and then we get a question, well, you know, can the catch can be too big? And it's like, no, it can never be big enough in a sense. But highly recommended that it has to be vented. If it's not vented, basically all that little can is doing is just catching oil and oil vapors, but you're not relieving any pressure. He does have this open, so he's going to be relieving pressure from here. And if you watch the last video, well, you'll see you'll actually see the blow by and the pressure and the smoke and all that stuff. So besides that, I'm going to get it up in the air. Like I said, nothing else. He's got an internal wastegate on a boost controller. Strap it down, I'll get it up in the air, and if I see anything noticeable underneath, I'll be back. So underneath the car, and I'm going to just note this because I believe he drove the car here. We got a pretty nasty brake leak. Looks like it's coming from the caliper bolt. It appears, I can't tell if that's the actual bolt itself up there, but it appears like it has, well, I know that's the bolt. What I'm trying to say is I don't know if it looks like there's two crush washers on the top and not one on the bottom. Usually you have a crush washer on the top and the bottom, but you can see not only is it leaking, it's leaking on the tire. See how the tire is darker? Not going to really be an issue on the dyno, because if you've been watching these videos, I don't use the actual car dyno for the dyno. It has its own brake. If you haven't been watching, you can go back and watch some videos. So everything else looks pretty solid underneath. Got a couple oil leaks, nothing major. Like I said, I'm not super hardcore strict. You know, we got a little oil leak here and there, not a huge deal. I just more so make a note so I can keep an eye on it. It looks like it's almost looks like it's a power steering line more so. So get this one loaded up, strapped down, and there's one other thing too that I want to mention that I forgot to mention in the engine bay. So I'll lower the car back and go over that. So the one thing I wanted to mention too is he has, this should be the Purge Solenoid. So usually the Purge Solenoid, or if it's the solenoid for the evap, usually these are tied in line with the gas tank to relieve pressure. So sometimes, every now and then, we'll get a guy that calls us up and says, hey, when I'm hitting boost, I'm hearing like a bubbling noise. And basically, you're boosting into your gas tank. So just a little heads up on that. I'm going to see where this actually goes. I'm going to make sure this is not going to anything connected on the firewall. And if it is, I'll disconnect it. So as I was just doing that last video segment, if you go rewind it, kind of pause for a second because I was confused because I saw a clip that was down here. Now this clip is actually the injector, and the injector portion is actually broke off. So you can see it's actually broke off inside there. Now it connects back on. It's a little bit of a pain doing this with one hand and trying to hold a camera, but it connects back on. But it's a huge issue because it's not on like super secure. If I pull on it a little bit, it's coming off. So if this were to come off during a pull, wide open throttle, you're gonna basically lean the cylinder out pretty well. You're gonna lean it out instantly, and that's where you hope for the best, because usually at that point that cylinder is going to be gone. So that is a pretty big deal. I'm going to have to keep an eye on that. I will note and tell the customer ASAP. I'm going to check the other ones too. You can see that's on there pretty decent. Trying to get that on there, so that one seems like it's on pretty decent. This one's wiggling pretty decent. I'm just going to leave it on there. I'm just going to mention it to the customer and keep an eye on air fuels if air fuels seem like they're getting funny up top, because if that injector stops working, yeah. So interesting nonetheless. With that being said, I'm going to get it on the dyno, strap it on, and start doing my job. So we're doing a quick spark plug check here. Before I get too deep into the tune, I want to make sure we got some good plugs in it. Plugs look, trying to focus there. Plugs don't look super bad, but you can see that they're just gritty and dirty. There's oil on the bottom of my spark plug socket. It's kind of been the how each one's looking, so definitely something that needs to be kept an eye on. You can see that there is some oil on the valve cover-ish. So I'm not sure if he just did these plugs. Plugs were actually hand tight too. I don't know if I can get... Got some good spark plug wires though. Let's see if this one was hand tight. Yeah, they're hand tight, which is never good. So I'll mention that to him. I don't know if he's maybe never did spark plugs before and he was just a little bit scared to tighten them all the way. But you want them, definitely want them a little tighter than that. So we got this one in. This one's got some weird looking stuff. I'm gonna put a set of fresh plugs in there. This one's got oil too on the bottom. If my phone would stay focused. Yeah, whatever. You can kind of see it. There you go. I'm trying. It's trying there. So, get some new plugs in there. New fresh plugs. Always a plus with the tune. And start tuning partial throttle, getting all that going. Creep into boost. See what we want to do. I'll be back. Well, you guys can see the condition of the plugs. Not the greatest. Definitely is going to help replacing them. So, I'm just not sure how old these are. If they're fairly fresh, he needs to definitely take care of the oil issue. You can see the oil on that one, which is only going to trickle downward, get into here, which is definitely not what you want. So we have our first, I won't say major issue, but we have our first real problem of the day on this. Boost control doesn't want to be controlled at all. So he's got the internal wastegate manual boost controller. Manual boost controller is cranked all the way down, and no matter what, it wants to boost to the moon. Thankfully, all my tunes have boost cut, so we keep hitting boost cut no matter what. So now I'm going to have to figure out why it's doing it. Possibly unhooking the boost controller and hooking it straight off the wastegate. See if it will control boost like that. But first I'm going to check the basics too to make sure it's hooked up correctly. But yeah, so I'm going to hop out and do that stuff and I will be back. So the boost controller is hooked up like it should be. I got the internal gate right now disconnected. You can see the rod. Of course, the clip decided to fly every which way, so I got to see if I can find that. If not, I got some steel wire we can wrap around it. But one thing that's interesting. So, and with internal wastegates, I always tell people to kind of start in the middle with the rod. Every internal wastegate is going to be different. Every setup's different. So, you start in the middle. You have a middle point. But what I noticed is, so inside you have a little flapper that is going to open up, and that's how you're going to relieve pressure. And I do have a glove on because it's super hot, and that didn't help the getting the clip off. But look how much this thing only opens. So this is pretty much closed. It's only opening that much. So you have to imagine that the little flapper inside is closed right now. It's only opening like a quarter way. So I don't know if that's going to be enough to control. I mean, we might have, the overboosting that we're seeing might just be that not opening all the way. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the rod where I think it should be. If it wants to overboost, what I can actually do is leave the rod disconnected and let this be open. And we're going to see how much boost it wants to build with that open. Now, by right, if that's open, should be building no boost. But I have a good feeling we're going to see some boost, and then we can start. Basically, what we're trying to do is eliminate the problem that we're having. And we're trying to pinpoint exactly the problem. So if I do a pull with it disconnected, and by right, that's like if you have no spring inside of a wastegate, you should not build boost. We'll actually see how much it would want to creep. So if it builds 2 or 3 pounds, we at least know it's opening and doing its job. If it builds 0, which we would like to see in a perfect world, 0 PSI, zero boost, then we know 100% it's working, it's opening, it's good to go. Then we just got to hopefully get this rod length how we want it and kind of go from there. So I'm going to report back. Just another little, I don't know what you want to call it, issue, curveball, I don't know. Call it what you want to call it. So I just did a pull. 2 things to note. And you can see how I have the catch can now just disconnected. Got a vacuum cap right there. First thing to note is after that pull I just did, the injector definitely did not want to stay seated. It came off and the car was missing. As I said, you ain't gonna really feel a misfire up top, wide open throttle. It's gonna be really, really hard. All you're gonna feel is this, I mean, you'll have a power loss, of course, but it's a recipe to get that's a recipe to have that cylinder wiped out. And that's the last thing I want to have happen here. So I got to be extra careful on that. I have to, if I'm not feeling comfortable with it, it is what it is on that sense. I spoke to the customer about it. He said he knew. He said it was too late to reschedule at this point. So now I did a pull though with this fully disconnected, and it's hot. So see though, it's moving. The rod is not. It will move on its own. Let me find my. I'm trying to find my gloves, but anyways, this does move on its own. The rod's not interfering with it, as you can see. But with this disconnected, so this is what's controlling boost. This disconnected, which means it would be open all the time, which by right means you should build no boost. Well, we are building about 10.5 psi. I say about because it's in kPa. Megasquirt reads in kPa. So, with that being said, we are going to have really no way to control boost here. Seeing that that's seeing 10.5, if I hook up the internal gate, I mean, I'll hook up the internal gate and I'll let it do its own thing. We don't need a boost controller at this point. We're right at his goal. His horsepower goal was max 250. We're pretty much right there, trying to read the actual computer. So I'm going to dial in the tune as best as I can now. This is what I'm working with. So as I just said, I'm going to dial it in the best as I possibly can. Realistically, I'd like to be able to control boost, of course. Makes sense. I'll come back with the final dyno number. And he's got some stuff to take care of, and then it can ultimately bring it back and can finish the tune up properly. So I'll be back, guys. So, we have some good news and bad news. I was able to keep the boost where we want to keep it at now with it hooked up. It's hooked directly up to the turbo, so we got rid of this. Don't need it right now. We hit his goal. Well, his goal was 250 max. We had 253, so I'm going to turn it down. I'm going to make sure the boost cut is where it needs to be. But at this point, I'm pretty much going to call it, because that injector over there keeps popping off. And as I step over, this injector keeps popping off. Every time I do a pull and I let the car come down, and if you listen really good, you can hear in the last, in the pull I just did, and you saw, you can see that it's not staying on and it's causing a misfire. So, as I've been saying, at this point, it is what it is. I'm gonna dial in the tune as best as I can. Tell him to fix this stuff. And he's gonna need new injectors. There's no way around it. You can't fix that. The whole injector is just cracked. At this point, it is what it is. I'd rather not have it blow up because of that. And yeah. Hopefully you guys are enjoying these videos. With that being said, this one is a wrap. If you got questions, comments, you can shoot us an email, rcautoworks@gmail.com. If you're on Facebook, it's rcautoworks. Instagram, it's rcautoworks. And you can call us, but it's going to be very hard to get me on the phone because I actually do work and I don't sit at a desk all day. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. Please like it and comment below because it helps me. Any feedback is very helpful as well, so I appreciate the guys that are commenting. With that being said, hopefully you guys are having a good day. So I wanted to do one quick video, one quick last video. Was able to hit it. His max goal, he said, was 250. Well, we hit 253. Was able to get boost on a little bit more too with the internal wastegate. But had to stop with that injector. I wasn't going to push the limit and have this thing pop on the dyno. So it's a little bit bittersweet. Couldn't get the torque reading. His RPMs were jumping all over the place. The dyno wasn't able to pick it up either. So 253 horsepower, bittersweet. Wish we could have kept on going a little bit more, got it more finalized, but got to fix that injector.